It's John Pollock, joined, as always, by Jimmy Korderas. We are coming out of SummerSlam from Sunday night at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. 6 hours on the dot, no overrun. So, hey, small gains we're making.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take it because I was fully expecting this to go to probably 11:30.
Yes, and I don't know if that was just the WWE being very disciplined or the fact that they were in a state where it's union workers working these shows, that maybe there was a hard out that they wanted to make sure, because there's a curfew in New York for these arena events that they have to be out of. I learned this when the UFC ran Madison Square Garden last November.
Yeah, and Madison Square Garden is a special building when it comes to, especially when it comes to the unions that work. If I may, really quickly,
go for it.
When we used to set up there, and of course being on the ring crew at the time, you're setting up the ring, and in every venue you go to, you have, whether it's union, non-union, there are stagehands that help you set up the ring. Madison Square Garden was different because there was a certain set of stagehands that would help put up the frame because that was metal.
Right.
Now, when it was time to put the boards on the ring, you had to call the carpenters, and they come in to put the boards on because only they are allowed to touch the wood.
Wow.
Now, we, being the outsiders, weren't allowed to do anything. All we could do is direct traffic. And people would say, well, that's a cool thing. You don't have to. No, but, the ring is our responsibility, and it has to be set up correctly.
Yeah, you don't want people that are not experienced with this kind of setup, getting in the middle of things.
And especially, you're in a hurry to get set up for the day, it's television and stuff like that, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boop, coffee break, we're gone.
Wow. And this was this for all venues in New York, or was this specific to the Garden?
Well, New York, New Jersey area, they were fairly all similar, but New York, MSG was like just the epitome of not pleasant to deal with.
Yeah, I mean the cost aside, the Garden is, I think, the most expensive arena to rent, and you've seen them migrate now. They'll do their couple of house shows a year at the Garden, but it's Barclays Center is now the Northeast home for them.
Pretty much.
And this weekend kind of epitomizes that every weekend and every year, and they've announced 4 more shows for next year's SummerSlam weekend.
And really quickly again, the other thing that people don't realize is the arena at Madison Square Garden is on the 5th level.
That's
so
right.
To get all the equipment up there, you have to forklift everything up a curving ramp, which is not fun.
And I don't know if this is related or not, but this happened at WrestleMania last year. I think it was prevalent this year at WrestleMania, but the worst spot on these lengthy shows is that opening match on the kickoff, because doors opened at 5 o'clock. Right as the kickoff is beginning. So the Hardys and Jason Jordan took on The Miz, Dallas, and Axel, and it was empty. This arena was empty for that opener.
Yeah, and I'm assuming a lot of it had to do with the security issues. They're being, of course, more security conscious when big events are held in these arenas, and that holds up the lines. I remember at WrestleMania 32 in Dallas, trying to get into the stadium was a pain.
Yeah.
Because there was so much security and so many hoops you had to jump through.
I felt awful for these 6 guys. They go out, and it's just, there was nothing you could do. There was nobody there. There had to have been 100 or less people in the arena for that kickoff match.
Oh, easily. And, maybe it was a flashback for them to the days of Omega.
Yeah, it might have been. So let's start, though, from, we'll go from the top. Consensus match of the night was the Fatal 4-Way. Brock Lesnar retains. This was just incredible match, 20 solid minutes, and watching this match, it's something I felt for a while, but it just totally was crystallized for me during his entrance. And that is, to me, you're never going to have that one specific guy that is you can just anoint as the next guy. That's just not how things work. It's not as though they just said, this person is going to be the next Austin, the next Rock, the next Cena. I think it's going to be a collection of guys. Braun Strowman, to me, is the person I would be looking at for the big challenge at WrestleMania. I would not be throwing away that Lesnar match in a month, which they may, but Braun Strowman, to me, feels like the one I would put my chips on as the guy with the most ability of everything that they covet in a star that can work that main event, big match, and him and Lesnar, that singles match will be a big deal.
I think so, too, and the progression of Braun Strowman has been incredible for a guy who's level of experience, let's say, so far in the business. I think he just comes off as a great listener, because those are the guys that progress well and quickly. And he looked like a big star last night, and he wasn't damaged whatsoever in that match. He looked fantastic. Everybody I thought looked good. You know, some people are complaining that not enough from Joe. You can make that argument, but at the same time, I thought he was protected well. But the main story of the match was to get Braun Strowman over huge, which they did.
Yes.
And to continue the story with Brock Lesnar being the unbeatable beast, which I hope, like you said, leads to a WrestleMania match. That's the WrestleMania money match for me too, as well.
It would be, that would 100% be my call. I understand they have their plans locked in, but I mean, sometimes you have to adjust when you have long-term plans. If something, you can't predict who's going to catch fire, but Braun, that momentum is just built and built and built, and then it was the question, okay, well, once you get him out of the squash matches, well, then what if when he's got to work 20 minutes? It's like, dude, this guy's passed every single test that has been thrown at him. The audience is into him. He is a giant star. And him and Lesnar, the place was buzzing when those two were teasing their interaction, and they gave you ever so just enough to just kind of whet your appetite, because that's the match you're designed to see coming out of this.
And there were little teases throughout the whole thing that, like during the match when Brock went to take Braun Strowman to Suplex City, didn't accomplish it. So there's a nice little tease there for whenever they decide to hook that up.
He did the big table spot to kind of briefly take Lesnar out.
Speaking of which, that's where I was just little subtleties that Brock Lesnar doesn't get enough credit for his selling, in my opinion, especially for a big guy, because big guys don't sell fairly well normally, in my opinion. He sells great. And there was one little thing after the second power slam through the second table, then Braun pushes the third table on top of him when all this the EMTs come out and everybody's like concerned with him. Brock is lying on the ground, and he just like rolls over and he does this.
Oh, wow.
Like he's doing this to the paramedics and stuff like that, and anybody who's in the know knows that the X symbol is a sign for a legitimate injury in wrestling. Now, whether he did that consciously to...
it was the DX anniversary this past week.
Oh, there you go. No, but, like if it was a conscious effort for those who are in the know, to go, oh, look, he's giving the X. Is it real? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Regardless... For me, that was a cool little, thing to throw in. But again, going back to this match, Brock Lesnar went over, Braun Strowman got over.
Yeah, it was well laid out. I think surprising that it was Roman Reigns taking the fall, and that's maybe the more interesting question is what happens with Roman Reigns coming out of this, because you could just spin him off with Joe. They could go that direction after, the angle here in at Raw in Toronto when Joe came out to choke out Reigns during the last man standing match. Yep. That's probably an option if you're going Lesnar and Strowman. But there's part of me that really hopes that they see this magic with Lesnar and Strowman, and they have the patience to at least wait to Survivor Series. I mean, I know you have a big Staples Center show next month, but to me, this is a match you can save for something much bigger.
Right, and the Staples Center could be that bridge pay-per-view where you don't need Brock Lesnar on that card defending the title. I mean, people always complain, whoa, what about the 30-day rule? It hasn't been an issue for a long time. But stop with the 30-day rule stuff. But you know what I mean? It just it doesn't need to happen. You can have that number one contenders match headlining or something like that. Brock doesn't need to be there for that one. He needs to be there for the big one, though.
Yeah, so, I mean, everyone believed this was the match of the night. You're not going to get any arguments from me. Very, very solid match. And it came after a show that I think was to be nice, was a mixed bag going into the main event. I think had you taken that main event out, I don't know if this is a show that's going to get the same level of praise. I mean, the main event was a big difference maker for me on this show, which when we compare it to the WWE title match, Kurt Angle certainly won the argument with Daniel Bryan.
That was what I was worried about going into that. I thought the clash of styles would hamper the match, and maybe that's exactly what happened. I know a lot of people will complain that it's Jinder's fault, and you can't blame it on one person. It takes two to tango, and especially in a wrestling ring. If guys don't have chemistry, they don't have chemistry, and and we've seen before that Jinder Mahal can have decent matches with people. So
it's the spot in which when you take a character like Jinder Mahal and just overnight you put him into this position, it's really difficult. There's a reason you don't see that happen that often, because you're going from working underneath nothing matches to suddenly you're going to be compared to what's happening in the Fatal 4-Way. Right. That's the expectation level of a title match. And he didn't have the luxury of slowly moving his way on up and gradually growing. Look at the gradual growth Braun Strowman was afforded over the last year. He wasn't just thrust into the main event last summer because he was big. He was slowly brought along, and he was a special talent as well. So Jinder Mahal is in the deep end of the pool, and on a big show like this, the expectation level is going to be very high for a title match, and that's this match just fell flat to me.
No, I agree totally. It just didn't work for me either, and I know people are complaining about the same formula. The Singh brothers interfere. They eat the whatever opponent's finish is. In this case, the Kinshasa.
Is the prison coming back so soon?
No,
I do think this feud is continuing.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to continue, but I just no. Is there some? Can we figure something else? Is there something else other than a Punjabi prison we could do here, or like a Karachi Vice match or something? I don't know.
All options that could be thrown out there. Maybe Jinder can go to his Canadian roots or something. Yeah, like have a match on, I don't know, a hockey rink.
That would work. Like, have it in Calgary, a Saddle Dome special or something. I don't know.
They'll be saddled with something, probably. But we have a long time until the next SmackDown pay-per-view. But that was the match. This was a match I'm curious your reaction to, okay? AJ Styles and Kevin Owens. This match was all built around Shane McMahon being the world's worst referee, to the point that I think you could definitely sympathize with Kevin Owens. I mean, this guy, he's getting knocked around. He's missing stuff. I mean, the whole thing was this guy just screwed up left, right, and center to the point that it drove Kevin Owens to the brink here, and then is caught with the Styles clash. You know, a good match between Styles and Owens, but as we said in the preview, this match was all built around the referee, and not so much. The match was secondary to what is coming out of this, which is clearly an Owens-Shane match.
Yeah, it's coming up for sure, and that's probably I would suspect Survivor Series for that match to happen. But my favorite part of the whole match, and I hate to take it away from the actual in-ring product, but my favorite part of the whole match is when Kevin Owens yelled at Shane McMahon, "You fall off buildings and you get." That line just had me rolling off the chair that I was sitting in. But yeah,
survive plane crashes.
Yeah, he goes down in the water, nothing happens. He jumps off cells. But hey, you know what it is? It's that magical ref shirt. Once you put it on, gust of wind comes by.
You could have given him some tips ahead of time, maybe
how to avoid the gust of wind.
How to deal with that. But
other than that, it was a decent match. But like you said, it shifted the focus more. Like you said, it brought a little sympathy to Kevin Owens, and it's funny because Kevin Owens, since his debut in the WWE, has nothing to endear himself to the audience. He comes off like he's a great heel. It's just that that hardcore audience, they like him. They're not going to boo him anyways. But this is just another reason for them not to boo him.
And given that this was. They've done several pay-per-view matches at this point, 3 in total. They've done their television matches. Is this the end of the feud?
I think so. I think it's time for somebody else, for AJ Styles, someone to challenge for the U.S. Championship.
Who would that be?
Who would that be? Before Sunday, I would have said maybe Baron Corbin.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that may be a question mark right about now. Or Rusev, I could have.
That one.
There you go.
The heel side is very, very bare at the moment,
but
there was a title change on the weekend on the NXT side.
Exactly.
There is an open. There is a void on the SmackDown heel side that could be inserted by Bobby Roode very seamlessly.
Exactly what I was thinking. He could make SmackDown very glorious in a hurry. Not to shift focus to NXT, but the way that NXT ended with Drew McIntyre as champion, and then Adam Cole immediately coming out with Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, almost like a little.
There's no reason to do the rematch program with Bobby Roode going for one more shot. It's like he should probably at TV finish up his Roderick Strong program, and then smooth sailing to the main roster. Like that should be the cycle of an NXT performer. Came in a solid year and moves on.
And he comes into SmackDown and he says, "You may be phenomenal, but I'm glorious." Writes itself.
Yeah, I think that's a natural way of where you could go.
That's
Styles.
a layup. To me, that's a layup.
Yeah. And I mean, that heel side is. Let's move to John Cena and Baron Corbin because this was put. What did you think of the positioning? Because my thought was that if, like I said last week, this was a match that if it was late in the show and it's not clicking, this could really drag. So they put it on it was in the opening position on the main show where I thought the crowd was going to give these guys more just because it's so early. It's a John Cena match. It's something unique that it's so early. Not the case. This was a very forgettable match, especially by John Cena standards on a big show, that this was an afterthought midway through the show. And there was nothing given to Baron. I thought for sure he was kicking out of that AA. I thought they were at least going to give him something. He got nothing. Cena wins. He is now advertised for Raw moving forward. He's on the Raw pay-per-view next month. So this was probably his final SmackDown appearance for the foreseeable future. And Baron Corbin, quote Jason Agnew, he felt like he was rebranded as Buried Corbin on Sunday.
Oh, I like that.
Not a good week for him.
No, definitely not a good. It hasn't been a good couple of weeks because as those who follow along will know, his social media interactions with certain people have not endeared him to the office, so to speak. So,
see, what's your thought on that? Because I view these guys when they're throwing jabs at guys on the roster on Twitter, and yeah, he had the guy who had been deployed to Afghanistan. That was a bad. I don't think he obviously didn't realize that this was a member of the military, even though it was there in his Twitter bio. But like, do you not want your characters playing their characters on Twitter? Because that's what I expect out of these people when they're on Twitter. And he's throwing lines at John Cena, or he's, Finn Balor. It was kind of one where it was anyway. I don't know. I don't see a whole big deal here, but you add up all of this, it clearly led to something because it has been a reversal of fortune for this guy in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, again, it's one of those deals where you're working if we were in you and I were in a rivalry and I would tweet you something and make snide remarks or something like that. Staying in character, but at the same time, there is a line you're not supposed to cross. But apparently, in today's day and age, when it comes to anti-social media, people tend to try to push buttons. Well, I know all about that. And sometimes you just got to pull back a little bit, especially in a situation where you represent a billion-dollar company. It's corporate world at WWE now. It's not like the old days where it was just Vince running the place. Now they have people to answer to, advertisers to answer to, and it's one thing to get in these little Twitter battles with your coworkers and your colleagues, and whether there's heat there or not, whatever. But to go and start taking jabs at wrestling journalists and stuff like that, you don't need to do that stuff. And especially, someone who's been doing wrestling journalism for over 30 years, and trust me, if you're going to try to get into a battle of words with him, you ain't going to win.
Yeah, it's just, I was told over the weekend that it was not so much necessarily punishment, just that Vince just changed his mind on the guy. Now, what led to that mind being changed? I'm sure a lot of this played into it. I think it was just a perfect storm that they looked at this guy. What I look at it as well is that, okay, this guy wasn't ready. Listen, we said back in Money in the Bank when he won, this guy is much like Jinder Mahal, where the expectation level is this guy's going to be a main event performer. And inserting a guy like a Baron Corbin into the main event, this isn't 5 years ago. This isn't 10 years ago. The bar in WWE for a main event performer has never been higher. So if you're not sure on a guy, listen, that briefcase, you had 10 more months to get this guy ready, or at least get that briefcase on someone else. Instead, you've taken a great element that's helped create stars in the past and wasted it this year. I mean, that briefcase looks like it was just a total mulligan this year.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it has to do too, and I don't know the man personally because I've never really met him, so maybe it has to do a lot with his backstage maturity level, because like if you don't handle things well, which he seems. We already talked about the social media, which he isn't handling well. Maybe he isn't handling his position well. Maybe he's rubbing people the wrong way. We hear stories about Enzo rubbing people the wrong way. As much as it is,
maybe Enzo has his new partner.
There you go, the Heat brothers,
nuclear
heat. Yeah, but as much as it is corporate America at the WWE, there is still that locker room etiquette that exists. And if you're going to rub the top guys the wrong way, you're dressing in the hallway, you're getting kicked off the bus.
What do you see for Cena? I mean, he's advertised, we're talking on Monday morning, he's advertised for Raw tonight, he's advertised for the Raw pay-per-view. How do you insert him into the mix? I know that we were just talking about an open opponent for Reigns. That would be the last person I would pair with Reigns at this time of the year, because that's a big match to do down the road, which honestly, if I'm looking at my Mania matches, Lesnar, Strowman, and Reigns, Cena would be my big two on the Raw side. Especially
considering Reigns was penciled in as Brock's opponent for WrestleMania 34. So that if you are going to alter the card, that's a huge match waiting to happen. And just listening to the crowd during a Roman Reigns John Cena match will be very interesting. Both polarizing figures, but if you're going to make that switch, that would be the perfect opponent for WrestleMania. Too soon, I agree with you, John. Too soon for right now. So
they should just do. He's on Raw. There's the novelty of him being on Raw after a long time on SmackDown, and just lead to maybe Survivor Series. They just have a backstage interaction. It's going to be very hard. I don't think Cena's going to be around every single week, so you don't have the handicap of how do you keep these guys apart. Just because Cena is probably not going to be there every single Monday, but I just think both should be kept apart, and that would be my WrestleMania direction.
Well, wouldn't it be interesting if he was paired off with Braun Strowman going forward to kind of elevate Braun Strowman into that program with Brock Lesnar going forward?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of interesting options of where you can go when you're throwing Cena into the mix. Joe, I mean, it's all fresh matches for Cena, and coming off this Corbin match, you're certainly looking for a big John Cena match, hopefully, at next month's pay-per-view. Now, another SmackDown match. This was one, again, I thought, if it's going on late in the show, could also drag. Certainly didn't. Was Randy Orton and Rusev that went all of 10 seconds. With a finish that we joked about last week of just an instant finish. Orton wins. And, I didn't have a really bad reaction to this because on a 6-hour show, I really didn't mind having one match that's just 10 seconds. Rusev, to me, he's not. Now, I'm saying this in hindsight, the fact that this guy was not a main event pushed heel, but they certainly didn't do any favors of getting any new heels up and running here. So Randy Orton wins and Rusev beaten in 10 seconds. There's not a whole lot to break down here other than the thinking of beating Rusev in 10 seconds.
Yeah, trying to figure that one out a little bit. And it's not like the deal with Daniel Bryan when he lost with the Brogue Kick right at WrestleMania when, Sheamus, right? It was like, what? Again, 18 seconds or whatever they said it was.
Yeah.
Well, it was only 18 seconds because of the kiss, but anyway. But that did wonders for Daniel Bryan.
They beat their mark here.
Yeah, but that did wonders for Daniel Bryan. I think this is going to have the reverse effect for someone like Rusev.
Yeah, and this feud, I don't know how you really continue. I mean, you can do the whole, it was a fluke and the feud continues, but to me, Randy Orton's just beaten the champion on TV. He runs through Rusev. I mean, realistically, he should be programmed in the main event, but that's a program we just completed, and no one is expecting or wanting an encore with him and Jinder Mahal.
No, and I forget who said it, and I think it was on the Law Twitter account that this match was Randy Orton's best in the last how long?
In months.
In months, yeah.
I mean, you look at this year. This has not been a stellar year of pay-per-view performances from Randy Orton.
He's been handcuffed a little. Let's put it that way.
Let's chat about the Raw Tag Title match. Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, just one of many new champions from Sunday night, defeating Cesaro and Sheamus. A beach ball was destroyed, which was fantastic.
Loved it.
Yeah, that was great. I thought that this is going to turn this team forever.
I'm just worried that now it's going to, entice people to bring beach balls and just pull them out during Cesaro match.
I think it might have the opposite effect. I think if you see a beach ball out, the audience is just going to totally shame that person and destroy it.
We can only hope.
This was a very good match. I thought this was one of the best stories going into SummerSlam. They had a really strong match and a fresh tag team with the titles. And yeah, it's interesting where you go with this Raw tag division now that you have these babyface champions on the same brand as the Hardys, who could probably be revitalized if the Hardys were over on SmackDown, to be honest. And they could have matches with the Usos. They could have matches with some of the other teams there. It just seems that when you have this babyface unit, I mean, the Hardys are kind of in no man's land at this point.
Right, and there's also speculation coming off of Saturday night with the Authors of Pain possibly moving up to the main roster. I know a lot of people are high on them. Another team that, again, for the amount of experience they have, are actually have performed better than I have expected anyways. But, the tag team division does need a little bit of an injection, and maybe that's a good idea. Maybe the Hardys moving to SmackDown would help both the brand and them. Re-energize their career, and the tag team division has been floundering a little bit, but Sheamus and Cesaro, I've been enjoying them. I think they've been great as a team. They seem to have fun together, and when guys genuinely have fun in matches, working together, it translates, and you can see that. I don't know if this is there's a different end game for the Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins pairing, whether that's going to be an eventual turn by Dean Ambrose down the road. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I know a lot of people are speculating it, but I think it's going to be a fun ride with those two teams for a little while anyway.
Yeah, I thought that's where this was ultimately going to, would be a Dean turn. But this thing, I don't even think with their best case scenario could have expected this would have caught fire to the way it did. It totally revitalized Ambrose. Even Rollins, I think it really is a great lesson that, you're doing so many shows, and for these main eventers, you're doing so many of the same combinations that the tag division is a great detour where you can pair two guys together. It freshens up the tag division. It freshens up their characters. It's a totally different dynamic, and it's something that you can have a break from, where you form a tag team with two guys, and it takes them away. So both are going to be fresh when their feud eventually comes, and they can get back into the main event scene. Like Dean Ambrose could come out of this totally rehab from what the past year has been, which has not been a great one for him.
Right, and if anybody needed it more than anyone else on that on the babyface side, it was Dean Ambrose. It just I don't know if stale is the right word. He just felt complacent. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. This is right now for him the best possible scenario for him.
The SmackDown Tag Title match featured the Usos regaining the titles.
Was that on SummerSlam?
Apparently, it was on the kickoff show. Maybe the best kickoff match they've ever had.
It was great.
Defeating New Day. Phenomenal match. It shows that and got close to 20 minutes on the kickoff, which not every typical pre-show match is going to get. Yeah, this was outstanding. This was at a point where the crowd had made their way into the arena, so they weren't handicapped by that. Neville and Cesaro somewhat, it was still, the fans were trickling in. But this match was great. Phenomenal chemistry. Yeah. And I just thought some of the little, some of the tag team tactics with Big E and Xavier Woods, they gelled so well together, because Woods is not always the one it's usually the Kofi and Big E combination, and I thought Xavier and Big E, that's not the two you traditionally get. They were tremendous together as a team. I thought this was great.
It was great, and I was concerned at first when Kofi wasn't in the match, because obviously Kofi is an excellent in-ring performer and has one of the best babyface fire comebacks right now out of anybody on the roster. These two teams gelled well together. The one thing I will say, that being on the pre-show, you said it went probably about 20 minutes. They probably would not have gotten that 20 minutes.
No, they wouldn't
had they been on the pay-per-view proper. So maybe this was a blessing in disguise. And being on the pre-show, people take that, these guys, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a little bit of an ego. So maybe that lit a fire under their ass to give the old, follow that thing out there. But the other
and especially after earlier this year when that WrestleMania DVD came out and the kickoff matches were all not part of the DVD.
Right.
So it's not just, what does it matter? Pre-show, main show, it's on the network now. It's actually something that there's a financial hit there because you're not getting any DVD royalties if they continue that trend with this one.
And when they replay it during the week on the WWE Network, the pre-show is not replayed.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They only replay SummerSlam.
Well, this is one to go seek out because this is a great match.
Yeah, and the other thing too, the style of the match was different from pretty much everything else on the card because if I were to compare it, it's almost like going indie without going indie. And I think I've made this comparison before with NXT, which is why NXT seems to be resonating with that audience, is the style. And I know we talked about wrestling journalists, and Dave Meltzer always brings up the point where, the business is evolving. It's changing, it's growing. The standards and what they do in the ring changes and elevates, Gotch complained about Lou Thez killing the business, and Thez complained about Harley Race, and Race complained about Flair and Steamboat. Every generation complains about the next generation taking it too far, making it less realistic. But by that same token, these guys are kind of gelling the evolution with kind of keeping it still old school, if you know what I mean. I mean, yes, there are a lot of crazy big spots that guys are kicking out of still, but at the same time, it's not that. It's not that crazy stuff where they went from, this is the style we're going. We're going to progress to here, but we're not going to jump straight from 1988 to 2017 style. Do you know what I mean? It's a slow progression, and they're slowly doing that with NXT, which is what I think is catching on.
Both women's titles switched. We had Natalya beating Naomi clean with the sharpshooter, and then Sasha Banks beating Alexa Bliss with the Banks statement. Let's start with the SmackDown match. I thought this was one of Naomi's better matches. I think getting the title onto Natalya certainly opens up for some fresh and very good matches within that women's division when you look at the different pairings that could come out of this. I think still a surprising result, though, Natalya winning clean.
Yeah, a little surprising. I thought it was going to be the proverbial, Naomi squeaks it out and Carmella cashes in, but they're saving the cash.
No Carmella.
Nothing at all, except for the pre-show. Other than that, which was fine with me. But this match was actually quite good. I thought it was fine. The ladies they worked really hard. Naomi is very talented, very, as they say, probably one of the most athletic women on the roster. Natalya with the win. I'm cool with it. I'm okay.
The Raw match was strange because they were working the shoulder of Sasha, which I thought was clever because it's in everyone's mind about Bayley's injury.
Right.
And then she goes for the Banks statement. Alexa's able to get to the ropes, and then Sasha's like pulling her out. And right in the middle of Graves explaining that she can't get the full use of it because of her shoulder, she gets it and she taps like right away. And it just felt like a finish that was out of left field that the audience wasn't ready for.
Yeah, it did feel awkward. It felt, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, like, it just felt like it came out of nowhere. And I'm not talking RKO out of nowhere. I don't know. And I'm surprised that actually Sasha Banks is champion. I was enjoying Alexa Bliss as champion. I thought she was much.
And they have that great No Mercy ad built around Alexa.
Oh my goodness, wasn't that awesome?
Like
you got to admit, when it comes to stuff like that, they're second to none when it comes to video packages and promoting stuff. But anyways, which leads me to believe there's going to be a rematch at the pay-per-view. But
well, that's the thing. We're going to get the championship rematches after this show are going to be. I think it's going to drive everyone crazy, the rematch stipulations.
Oh, absolutely.
But plenty have been set up.
Oh, yeah, exercising your rematch clause.
Yes, of course.
Will be a phrase you're going to hear a lot.
Finn Balor and Bray Wyatt, I mean...
It's okay.
The match is fine. People love the entrance for the Demon, and I think it was a good call going with that because I think the audience was more into this just because of that from the get-go. The match was fine. It was even slightly above my expectations because Raw left me not wanting to see this at all. Balor wins. Bray, to me, is still just a lost character that just has, to me, I don't know. I'm looking at a character with I'm checking the vital signs, but I don't know.
I enjoy the character, I think, but it's just like you said. It's gotten to the point now where I've been holding out hope for Bray Wyatt to be I don't know.
I think everyone likes the idea of the character.
Yes.
If you were to explain this to someone, sounds really cool.
Yeah.
But the execution, it hasn't hit. He doesn't feel like a major star. His matches typically underdeliver, and it loses all the time. That probably doesn't help either.
No.
And it's just like I've always said, like it just took some minor tweaks that could really get this character on track. Getting the promos to be just a little more coherent, that you could digest and actually remember and understand what he's saying. And it's just, they seem very committed. Like, I get the feeling they love this character, but I don't see something that's connecting on any level.
No, see, and that's another problem. I mean, like, it's not like, it's a different intellectual type of promo that he does. If people remember back to the days of Nick Bockwinkel, where he did promos, he never shouted. He was always calm, and he spoke eloquently, and he used words that people had to use a dictionary to find out. Bray Wyatt it's in a different vein, where he'll say something where you have to Google it and find out. I don't get that reference. You know what I mean? It's lost on too many people. You have to at least with Nick Bockwinkel, when he was speaking the way he did, he was speaking above people. You know, like. That was his character. He was above the audience. Bray Wyatt is just, I don't know. I enjoy his promos, but at the same time, I'm saying it's just lost on too many people.
Yeah. Neville and Tozawa, as I meant, they were sandwiched as the second match on the kickoff show. Fine match. Audience was still making their way into the arena, and they flipped the title right back to Neville, which I wasn't expecting.
No, I figured, so why bother? No. Just so we can get a celebration with the Titus brand? No.
And I don't see any, again, the rematch, I guess, but it's just there's no one lined up for Neville. That's what I looked at, that, okay, if you're at least going to take the title off Neville, it's a new champion, fresh set of challengers, but not the case. And I don't know how many people are clamoring for a rematch out of these two, which will happen, but...
No, and I know people are saying, well, move Enzo over to 205 Live because he could flourish there. He can't keep up with these guys. Can you imagine Enzo in a match with Neville?
Well, I'm saving the worst for last, and that was a worst match of the year candidate, in my opinion, between Big Cass, or as I called him, Big Cass versus Big Cast on Sunday against the Big Show. This match was awful. Enzo took away any focus on the match by just yelling. Oh. I mean, it was just, I wanted to hit the mute button during this match. And then it worked up to Enzo lathering himself up with oil to get through the bars of the shark cage. So goodbye to that stipulation in the future. Makes this trek down to the ring and is immediately laid out like the biggest idiot on the show. Mm-hmm. And then Cass beat Big Show. This thing went over 10 minutes. This was dreadful. Everything I said positive about the main event, this was the polar opposite.
It's amazing to see, because when you see big man versus big man, you have certain expectations, whether they're low or high or whatever. And you saw Big Show against Braun Strowman were really, really good matches. These guys are hampered by a story involving a guy who's, I don't know how tall he is. I don't know how tall Enzo is. He looks like he weighs $105. I mean, and you're right. During the entire match, all you hear is this annoying yapping. And I have a friend of mine in New Jersey who's actually a worker, and he says to me, yeah, but hey, that's my boy. He's from Jersey. I said, tell your boy to shut up, because he's a distraction and not a good one. It's like he's supposed to be the baby face.
Like, listen, I know there's a lot going on with Enzo. He's not the most popular guy. But on TV, there was a time he was one of the most popular on Raw. Yeah. And they have just turned him into such an annoying loser that they have killed so much of the buzz that very few baby faces have had over the last while, that he did have. And as a merchandise seller, he's someone that I would not want to take my maybe personal feelings about a guy or how he rubs people the wrong way and turn him into this guy that just has this go-away heat on television now, which is the death knell for a babyface. And to me, he totally took away all the focus of this match. Not to say Cass and Big Show we're doing a match of the year beneath that shark cage, but all of this was just a total write-off on SummerSlam.
And again, you talk about Enzo, and you talk about promos and being coherent and stuff like that. And It just seems like the same old thing over and over again. It was kind of like the trap that the New Day was falling into, the same routine over and over again.
I don't even know why was Cass even insisting this guy being a shark cage? Like, what threat was this guy?
I don't know.
He finally breaks free, and boom, he's just laid out.
It should have been a gorilla tape over his mouth match. It would have been better for me.
Yeah, maybe that's where this is building to. And Enzo can't speak for a 6-month period or something like that.
Oh, see, that he'd break that in like 30 seconds, if that.
That was SummerSlam. It was, in the past they've always done the roller coaster on the poster. This was the most appropriate metaphor for SummerSlam. It was a roller coaster. Yeah. Some highs and some lows and some stuff in the middle. I go thumbs in the middle on this show. I definitely can't be too negative on a show that had that main event and some quality stuff that was mixed into the show. But of the 6 hours, I would say 3 were good, really good maybe.
Yeah, you know what? And in a 6-hour show, I'll take the 3 hours that are pretty good. So for me, the main event gave it a slight thumbs up. I will give it the glass half full on this one.
Glass half full, that's 50%. That's a pass. So thumbs in the middle from us. As we wrap things up, the WWE now has a bit of time off. It's a month until we will have a Raw No Mercy pay-per-view from the Staples Center. Possible Lesnar and Strowman on that show. I'm hoping not. But
No, please.
Well, we know how they like to be patient and wait for things.
Oh, exactly. Well, the audience is so patient too as well.
So that's going to wrap it up for us. You can follow him at Jimmy Korderas, and he will practice safe Twitter etiquette as he does on a daily basis, interacting with all of you out there, and always appreciates your questions and your analysis, especially all the people out there that can alert you to what their every last thought is.
Yeah, just keep them coming.
That's it for us. We'll speak with you next month.